It was a typical day for me. Went home, started my weightlifting session, and probably about 15 minutes in, I get the worst headache I've ever had right down the center of my head. My wife, Kelly, was in the kitchen. So she hands me an ice pack, put it on my head, I lay on the couch, and that's all I remember for the next 30 days.
Welcome to the Rock Bottom Podcast, presented by Jigsaw Health, where we share health horror stories that inspire. Today's guest was grinding through life when a sudden hemorrhagic stroke changed everything. After emergency brain surgery and months of rehab, he learned that he had to slow down and give up control to begin healing.
Before we dive in, just a quick note. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and it's not suitable as medical advice. So please always consult with a healthcare professional before making any changes to your health routine.
So let's get to it. This is the Rock Bottom Podcast. Jimmy Meehan, we are so excited to have you here today on the Rock Bottom Podcast. And I know that it was about 2 years ago, almost to the day, that you had a hemorrhagic stroke. Can you tell us about that day?
Whew, yeah. It's hard to believe it was 2 years ago. It's been quite the journey. But just to we can backtrack in time, but just to tell you about that day, it was a typical day for me. Woke up early, worked all day, and the way that I would normally kind of blow off steam from the day was I would go home and work out, lift weights, and that would just kind of relieve the stress of the day. So I followed my normal routine, went home, started my weightlifting session, and probably about 15 minutes in, I get the worst headache I've ever had right down the center of my head. And I thought, because I was doing a heavy shoulder press, I thought, oh man, I probably tweaked something. Now I have a terrible migraine, which I've never really had before, so I didn't know what that would really feel like. So I walked out of the gym, and my wife, Kelly, was in the kitchen. I was like, I have the worst headache that just kind of came on all of a sudden. So she hands me an ice pack, put it on my head. I lay on the couch, and my son, my youngest child, he pretty much does everything I do. So he grabs an ice pack, and Kelly actually has a picture of him laying on top of me with an ice pack on top of his head. Mm. And that's all I remember for the next 30 days.
Wow. 30 days?
Yeah, roughly. Yeah, roughly about 30 days. Apparently, after that point, Kelly took one of my daughters on a bike ride. And when they got back, I had made my way back to our master bedroom, and I was in the shower, just throwing up. And she was able to, at first she couldn't really get my attention. I wouldn't answer her. And she apparently yelled out to me, and I finally turned my head towards her, and she could just tell nobody's home. And so she called 911. Ambulance came. They were thinking the guy in his late 30s, this is they weren't thinking stroke.
They were probably, maybe thinking heat stroke or something, but.
Yeah, no, they administered Narcan. They were thinking it was some sort of overdose or something. And then I guess they took my blood pressure, and it was through the roof. And then they started moving quick, got me loaded up into the ambulance.
Why? What did the Narcan have any effect?
Not that I know of. I think they just kind of give it preventatively if they're not quite sure what's going on. Yeah. And it's symptoms similar to what an overdose might look like.
But then your blood pressure was through the roof, and that got them moving fast because they realized, wait a second, this isn't an OD. Was that the tip to them that this is a stroke?
I think they started thinking that that's a possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they got me loaded up, and they were going to take. I guess the way it works with an ambulance is they have to take you to the hospital that is closest from a mileage standpoint. So if there's a hospital that may be closer from a time perspective, that's not what they're supposed to do.
Wow.
And the place that was closest from a mileage standpoint is not a good place to go.
Should we name names?
I don't know if that's okay or not.
No, it's probably irrelevant.
Yeah.
But you ended up at a not so great facility.
No, thankfully. And this is kind of where like the miracles start lining up.
Oh, okay. So they should have taken you to the not so good place.
Yeah. And Kelly freaked out on the driver, and he was like, okay, we'll she wanted me to go to Mayo Clinic.
Yeah.
Which is, we live off 56th Street, so it's just directly
not that much
north.
further.
No.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, we're going to Mayo Clinic. And they get me there. And apparently, again, the miracles that kind of stacked up through this whole thing, apparently the whole neurology team happened to be on shift and were waiting for me in the ER.
Wow. I totally have goosebumps right
Yeah,
now.
I do too, just telling the story. There's lots of those miracle moments.
That's amazing. We want to hear those.
Yeah, and so they take me in. They do the CAT scans and all the stuff. They figure out where the bleed is, which is kind of right in the center of my brain. Blood was filling the ventricles of my brain,
Like actively filling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was.
So you had a
brain bleed.
Brain bleed.
Yeah, and that's what a hemorrhagic stroke is.
Yeah.
There's two types. There's ischemic, which is the more common, like blood clot type of stroke where the vessel gets clogged and it cuts the blood supply.
Yeah.
The next is a hemorrhagic stroke, which is an active bleeding of a vessel in the brain.
The vessel just kind of pops. It just kind of opens up.
Yeah. And apparently blood and brain tissue don't like each other. Blood is toxic to brain tissue, so it's, they're usually trying to figure out how they get that resolved.
Did they have any idea how this happened?
Yeah. I mean, the primary root cause of it is high blood pressure, which I knew. It wasn't, my blood pressure wasn't like insane, but it was high. And I was thinking, I'm in my 30s, I'll just keep getting in shape and I'll get it under control. I don't need the medication.
It'll take care of itself.
I'm invincible kind of thing.
Yeah, right.
In fact, I have said that.
Well, to a certain extent, mindset is like the most crucial thing. And like, I am invincible, I can't overcome is part of that. But sometimes the body has other decisions.
Yeah. Well, I remember saying to my wife at one point when I was in the hospital, still invincible. Like, it didn't take me out.
Didn't get me.
That's right.
So
You show up at Mayo Clinic. Their whole neurology team happens to be on staff and not busy, waiting for you. You get there and you do the CAT scans, all the things.
Yep. And kind of I think I'm grateful that it was Mayo Clinic, but also to me, it's another one of those miracle things. Apparently when there is blood in the brain, putting a drain in immediately isn't typical. Usually they'll see if it'll start to kind of dissipate and drain off. And the neurosurgeon just said to Kelly at some point, like, I'm just feeling like I need to go ahead and do this and get this blood out of there. But then he explained all of the risks, right? Because they drilled a hole in my head. I can still feel the hole, and they're feeding a tube down to the center of my brain. So it was some form of brain surgery.
Very invasive.
Yeah. And she called my brother, who happens to, he's a pulmonologist, but he also was the director of the ICU at that time at a hospital system that he works at. And he was already on his way here. And he's like, yeah, I mean, if they're willing to do it, like, have them do it. Because it was rare, right? Normally they're going to see if the body will deal with it itself. And that was, I think, another kind of miracle that they got that blood off quickly. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that's related to, the fact that I recovered so well. So they did that, and then I think I was in the ICU for another 15 days.
Yeah.
Which I don't really remember much. A couple little memories of just like weird stuff.
So they drilled into your skull, I guess a vacuum or whatever, through a tube. They began to suck the blood out.
Yeah,
and
they
were like,
I don't think
thank God we did this, or like,
yeah. I don't think they like draw it out. I think it just kind of works its way through that drain.
Yeah. Okay, all right, yeah.
And at one point, that drain started to clog, and then they used a experimental clot buster to try to get that to stop, and it worked.
Cool.
I forget the name of it, but again, another miracle that that was available.
So blood was starting to clot inside of the tube, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
So that was successful, and then you were basically, ICU for 15 days. I can't even imagine. Granted, you were not remembering much of that, but your family must have just been beside themselves during this process.
Yeah. It's weird that, Kelly and I have been together since we were 17 years old, so we've experienced a lot of life together. More of our lives have been together than apart. Yeah. I think when we hit our 14th year of our 14-year anniversary from being married, that was like officially the point where it was more life together than not.
Yeah.
And this was the first thing that we experienced totally different. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of like the emotional and traumatic side of her experience that I just couldn't relate to.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember it. I was hopped up on all sorts of great stuff.
Yeah.
A cocktail of fentanyl and oxy.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't really remember it.
Yeah. They
much.
put you out.
Yeah, I was sedated because my the pressure in my brain was really high. So they sedated me for 8 days, something like that.
So you were in ICU for 15, but you said total you were in the hospital 30 days.
Yeah. So once I was stable and I guess, kind of passing all of their little tests they would give me, I was transferred down to Barrows Neurological Center for inpatient rehab, where, I was there 24/7, slept, ate, and did stroke rehabilitation all day, every day for another couple weeks.
On you? I mean, you said you didn't really remember 30 days. I mean, you obviously remember a lot of that when you were doing the rehabilitation.
Yeah, I do remember a good deal of that. It was difficult emotionally, right? One of the things I remember from being in Mayo Clinic is one of the nurses said, "Do you know why you're here?" And I remember saying, I'm 39 years old and I had a stroke. Like that was just kind of like, strokes are for old people. is,
Right.
what I had in my head. And still kind of dealing with that as I'm going, like, I can't even believe this is happening. But at the same time, kind of as I healed and improved, being grateful that I'm recovering the way I am, because I was in there with lots of other people that were severely disabled, and had, just a really hard time doing very basic things. And I'm, day to day making these huge progressions. So it was kind of a weird thing.
Can't
And they
even
wouldn't,
imagine.
from, like, one of the things that drove me nuts is, they would have a bed alarm. And if I got out of bed without assistance, it would go off. And I'm not one that has ever followed rules. So I was driving them crazy because I was constantly getting up, and walking around my room and going to the bathroom on my own. And, that until the very end, that was like a no-no, like, fall risk, which they take very seriously. So I kept saying I felt like I was in prison. Yeah.
Yeah, all of your independence has been taken away.
Yeah. And that was the hardest part of, and probably my biggest lesson, in all of this was, I had to learn how to surrender and not try to control everything on my own, from, what was required of me while I was in the hospital, to even after once I was released from Barrows, I then went into what they call is their bridge program. And that's more of an outpatient intensive stroke rehabilitation program where you go every day, Monday through Friday, and you're there doing all of the, speech therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and, you're meeting with their, psychiatrists every day. And at first, after you have, a stroke, a brain injury, a seizure, you can't drive, until you pass these simulation tests. So I was having to rely on other people driving me,
Every day. Yeah.
at first. So, that was hard for me to accept, because I'm not one that very easily asks for help for anything. So, yeah, that was one of my big lessons, is it was time to surrender.
Can I ask how that's translated into like the other areas of your life, that big lesson?
Well, there's these deep, hardwired, patterns, that were in my life, and through this, I was able to identify them. But it's day to day of not sliding back into those patterns, of wanting to be in control of everything, drive hard, all of those kinds of things. And a big part of that process was me, like, learning how to manage that appropriately, which is all tied into, managing stress and all those kinds of things. And, that's still playing out today, of needing to not fall back into those patterns and grind myself into the ground, being willing to ask for help, not control everything. I mean, those are hardwired things that I've built over, I've built those habits and those patterns over my entire life.
Well, a lot of us have, because I feel like most of us were raised that is what you need to do in order to succeed in this life.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's, it's not, there's an element of truth in it, right? We have action to take. We need to be working hard. We need to be showing up. But not everything is in our control.
Yeah.
And, we like to think it is, and we'll just white knuckle it. And if I had to really kind of boil everything down to the root cause of all of this, yes, blood pressure was a big culprit. But it didn't help that I was going on very little sleep, for 4 or 5 hours a night. I took pride in the grind. Like I'm gonna grind myself into the ground every day. I'm gonna outwork everybody. I used to say things like, "Oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead."
Yeah.
Well, that almost happened.
Yeah, that's right.
And it wasn't all that great.
Yeah.
So you couple that level of stress that the body is under with high blood pressure. Those things only make the blood pressure worse, and it created this perfect storm for this vessel to just burst in my head.
Right. Well, stress was the culprit of the blood pressure to begin with.
Yeah, it was the primary culprit.
So if you, looking back...
Hold on. Before you go to looking back, did the doctors give you that specific diagnosis of like, hey, your blood pressure was this for this long, it led to this... not ischemic stroke, but hemorrhagic?
Hemorrhagic.
It led to this hemorrhagic stroke. Did they actually pinpoint that and say this caused that?
Yeah, where I had the stroke and the type of stroke was very typical of high blood pressure.
Do you recall what your numbers were on high blood pressure?
I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to it. When
most dudes, I wasn't really paying attention.
Yeah, I mean,
He's invincible.
Yeah, I was invincible
Right.
anyway, so it doesn't matter.
But like,
And when I'd go to the doctor, it would be, in the 140s or 150s, depending on the type
that's
of
what I was
day I
gonna
had.
wonder. Yeah, right. And they'd be
Yeah.
like, this is a little high, and you're like, yeah, I know, but it was just a stressful day.
Right.
You're like, I'm
Like,
working
all right,
on it.
well, we probably should look at that someday. Is that about the story?
Yeah, I mean, I had been prescribed blood pressure medication.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just didn't want to take it.
Yeah.
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 And part of it was, those medications, as they bring your blood pressure down, it makes you more tired.
Yes.
They have side effects.
Yeah, and I didn't like that. That
Right.
slowed down my grind.
Did you try any natural remedies for blood pressure?
I had here and there, different beet powders and things like that to increase nitric oxide and try to get the blood vessels to dilate a little bit. I didn't really.
So do you take the blood pressure medication now?
Yes.
You're like, okay, I'm convinced I'm
Yeah.
going to take it now. Especially with
just
your
not-
elevated risk. Right?
Yeah, I'm not willing to take that risk anymore. Like if I go to the office and I remember like, oh, I forgot to take my medicine, I'll go home and take it. Like it just creates like an anxiety in me.
Yeah. Do you take any magnesium?
Yes, I do now. And just even before that, kind of intermittently, didn't really stick with much.
Yeah. As you know, Jigsaw Health, very
I
well
do.
known for magnesium. And one of the things that we saw in the Scottsdale magnesium study about, 6-7 years ago, related to the MAG SRT was a decrease in blood pressure. And recently, within the last, I think 2 years, even the FDA has come on board with saying magnesium is indicated for lowering blood pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Magnesium does a million things inside of the body.
Right.
But healthy dilation of blood vessels, the contraction and relaxation, that's calcium. Well, it's more things than just this, but to simplify it down to terms, it's like calcium clenching, magnesium relaxing. And so, of course, this is, work with your doctor. Folks at home, work with your doctor. This is never medical advice on this show. We're just wanting to outline stories of what people have been through and what they've done to help other people like, okay, well, Jimmy tried this and that happened. And, we just
Finding
all
the
want to
pieces
learn.
to their health puzzle.
We all want to learn from each other.
Yeah.
But I would say that, magnesium, the indication for blood pressure is pretty strong. And we saw a really strong decrease in blood pressure down to healthy levels. So for people that are considering, talk to your doctor about potentially using magnesium. And I guess I would even encourage you, we didn't bring you on the podcast to be a sales pitch.
Yeah.
Well, one of the big things
hold on, let me finish But, I would talk to your doctor about, and we'll give you the data to look at to say like, hey, could I switch? Because magnesium also helps with energy levels. So it's like that is a common problem with like blood pressure medication, is that like it zaps my energy. Well, magnesium, for most people, it helps with blood pressure, but also then increases energy, because one of the other things magnesium does is it helps to create ATP, the energy molecule inside of the body. So
Yeah.
And you can use my code Patrick10 for.
Well,
although that probably is a code.
I think one of the things that tipped you off to that is that blood pressure medication, among a lot of other medications, actually strip the body of magnesium specifically. So it's even more important to supplement with it if you are taking a medication. So just
that was
food for thought.
something in Susie Cohen's book, Drug Muggers. She talks about there's 14 different classes of drugs that will deplete the body of magnesium. And you can find that on the
We could link
folks
to
at
that
home.
in
You
the.
can find that on, we can put that on the show notes. But, okay. Next subject.
I was
not
going to
next
go back
subject,
to.
but like moving on from magnesium, which is hard to do because that's my favorite mineral of all time.
And you're still going.
I know. Okay, Ash, take it away,
This
please.
is what we do here.
Yeah.
So if you can recall back to the time before the stroke, if you could now put a number on your stress level, like through different eyes, right? When you're in it, it's hard to tell. But now looking back, 10 being the worst, 1 being the least amount of stress, what would you put on your stress level at that time?
So if you would have asked me then, I would have, put it on like a 5 or a 6, right? Because, the one thing that I didn't really realize or want to acknowledge is stress is more than just stressful moments or events that happen, right? Those are certainly stress. But there's stress in lots of other ways too. If you're eating crappy food, your body is going to respond like it's stressed. If you are working out really hard and over exerting your body for too long, we're taught that, if you want to get in shape, you grind yourself into the ground, and the body's going to receive that as stress and be releasing cortisol and shooting your blood sugar up and all those kinds of things. Then you just have the normal stress of, owning a business, 3 kids, all the things. Looking back on it, I would say it was probably closer to a 9, or maybe in days when it was a 10.
Yeah. For how long do you think you rode that wave of like that high stress?
I mean, most of my adult life, just because I was so bought into, the hustle and the grind. I was prideful of it, that I worked so hard and that I only slept 5 hours.
Right.
Yeah.
And you were getting results. You were building a business. You were raising kids that were growing up healthy, and you were like,
I'm
the
doing
man
it.
of the house, and you were, it's definitely a part of the culture.
Yeah.
I resonate as well with your answer of, I was probably at a 9 for most of my adult life, but I would refer to it as a 5 or a 6 because, I didn't have any real stressful moments today.
Right.
It's just the whole day was stress. Right. And I have.
Well, it's the whole construct of a life.
Yeah.
Everything I would do was, not everything. A lot of the things I would choose were stress, like being overscheduled and committing to too much, and because I just wanted to keep going, keep conquering.
How did your wife Kelly feel about your stress levels then did she talk to you back then and say, hey, you should slow down? Or was she just like, this is just Jimmy? Like, what was her?
Yeah. I mean, she's always known me to be a very driven person, but this is very, like, I've learned a lot about this because of her, right? This is very much in her realm of what she does, what she's passionate about. The health effects that stress creates on the body beyond just strokes, long-term prolonged stress. So this was always something that she would bring up. Like, you need to figure out a way to manage your stress, which to me at that time, I was like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
It kind of fell in the same bucket as, like, when somebody would say, like, you need to start dealing with emotions. Like, I'm like, what does that mean? Like, I don't know. I'm pretty happy.
Like, what do you want? Just like supposed to go try and cry? Or
Yeah.
what does that mean?
Right. I just had no concept for what that meant. And I looked at it as those super stressful moments when, you physically feel the stress and the anxiety. And, I was like, well, I keep that.
I only had
at a
like
minimum.
5 of those moments this week.
Right.
So I'm dealing with it.
Right.
And I resolved the problems.
Right.
So I dealt with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I won the day. Like that
won
was
the
something
day.
I said all the time.
Yeah.
Win the day.
Is there something that you have for yourself when you find yourself kind of slipping back into those old, deep programmed things of like overscheduling yourself, overworking, feeling like guilty when you're not doing something productive, that kind of gets you back to center?
Well, I think the whole experience and kind of remembering what I've had to come through, and probably more importantly, the toll that it put on my family is a great way to get kind of recentered on it. But I'll even feel it physically. Like if my calendar starts getting extremely full, I'll need more sleep. I'm more irritable, less motivated to do the things that I know I need to be doing. And I'll have to kind of recalibrate, clear my schedule, delegate some things, and then get back on the right track.
Isn't it kind of amazing once you start to pay attention to your energy in that way, how it makes you feel when like your calendar starts to get over, like you're aware now. It feels like, would you agree that you were a little bit subconsciously going through life where you're like, you're not really paying attention to maybe your needs, whereas now you are more hyper aware of them, so that when you start to feel like that feeling of overwhelm, you're like, I better pay attention to this. I'm not going to just grind through it now. It's like, no. And then you become a little bit more sensitive to your own.
Yeah, definitely. And if I have still kind of one lasting effect from all of this, I still deal with a lot of fatigue. Like, I'm just not able to go as hard as I used to. I nap a lot to get through the whole day.
Yeah.
And there are days when I go home in the middle of the day and I take a nap, and then I'll go back to work for a little bit.
Yeah.
And I've just kind of tried to structure my day and my time to make sure I have some margin to be able to do that when I need to. But again, that's like, I'm not perfect at it. It's hard. It's still hard for me to say no when someone wants to meet with me. But there's tools like, time blocking and things like that to try to manage some of it.
Prioritizing your self-care, right?
Yeah, and I think as someone, as a business owner and a dad and trying to be a good husband and all these things, like you're willing to sacrifice yourself. That's the first thing that gets sacrificed when something comes up. I used to feel like I was being selfish if I was taking time away from my family to go exercise. And I've just had to completely change my mindset in that of, the best way to serve my family is by being healthy and being able to have enough energy to get through the day.
And to show up as your best self, right?
Right.
Speaking of exercise, how has your exercise routine changed from before the stroke to after?
Yeah. So before, I would categorize it as very inconsistent. I've always been kind of an all or nothing person. So I'd go hard for a while and then I would be like, I don't have time for that, and nothing. But it was always centered around strength training, lifting weights, which, served me well going through that. Kelly said that the doctors were saying, like, if he didn't have the amount of muscle mass that he had, he wouldn't make it.
Wow. Why is that?
I think there was a 10-day period or something like that where I didn't eat at all.
Oh, yeah. So your body was feeding off itself. Wow.
Yeah. And just having the strength and the muscle tone to be able to, I, for a short time, had like a left side deficiency, which is pretty classic stroke.
Stroke symptom.
Yeah. And I had the muscle tone to be able to kind of strengthen back up and get function going. So it was just important. And I'm a big believer in exercising in a way that you enjoy, and I really do enjoy that. But I'm not gonna put 500 pounds on my back and squat that anymore. Like I just can't. It's too much stress on the body and my joints. I'm getting old. So I still enjoy that, and that is probably more central. But as I was going through recovery, my hormones were all messed up, and my weight just skyrocketed. I could do and I was doing everything perfectly by the book from a nutrition standpoint. I was working out twice a day.
This is in recovery?
This is after, yeah.
Wow.
I was running, like interval sprints on treadmills, and I was doing it all, and my weight just kept climbing and kept climbing and kept climbing. And I was working with the doctor with a doctor at the time, and he said, your body is still in fight or flight. Mm-hmm. And by putting this much pressure on by, lifting weights and sprinting, and your body is receiving that as stress, your blood sugar is dysregulated because of that, because of the cortisol and everything else that's going on. So he's like, I want you to stop that, and I want you to go for an hour-long walk a day, and that's it. At slow, like just a casual walk for at least an hour a day. And it took some time, and I had to be really consistent with it. But what started to happen is my body my nervous system started to calm down, and my blood sugar regulation got better, and got more to stable. Insulin levels got stabilized and back down to somewhat of a normal range, and weight just started to drop.
What was going through your head? You're like, I'm just walking, I'm just going to gain more weight now, like how is this going to help? Or were you like, all right, this kind of feels good,
yeah,
I'm just going to trust it?
Yeah, and that was back to the theme of surrendering.
Mm-hmm.
At that point I was so focused on just what do I need to do today, and I would just be kind of hyper focused on it, and that's what I was told to do, so that's what I'm going to do. which is very much against my nature, right? I'm going to do the opposite of what I'm told
You're a
to
rebel.
do. Yeah. But I really did just surrender to it, and decided I was going to finally start listening to, doctors that I trust, and it worked.
Yeah. When was this? When did you say that moment? I'm going to finally start surrendering and listen to the doctors. Was that?
That was really in inpatient, when I was inpatient
Okay.
rehab, because that was a grind.
How long was that?
At least 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
Wait,
every
so
day.
for the timeline, it was about May of 2023 that you had the stroke.
May 30th, 23.
May 30th, 2023. In the ICU for 30 days.
No, that was like, I think 15 to 18 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then in inpatient at Barrows for about 30 days,
2 or 3 weeks.
2 or 3 weeks, and then the outpatient for about another 2 or 3 weeks.
No, outpatient was 6 months.
Okay.
So you nailed
That
it.
was-
The
yeah.
whole timeline, you nailed it.
I got it completely wrong.
But that's okay, because now
Yeah,
I
it's all
have it
good.
clear in my
Yeah.
head.
There
And
might,
I'm not-
there might be
I-
one person in the audience that had the same question as me,
Yeah.
and we had to clarify because, well, what I couldn't figure out is when the weight gain was starting to happen, but it started to happen, I think, during the inpatient. Or no, not the
No,
inpatient.
the outpatient.
During the outpatient.
Yeah.
So as you're being driven there because you can't drive yourself, and you're like, I'm now starting to work out again, and like I'm starting to sprint because I want to get this weight off, and I'm eating correctly. But so during that 6-month period, when did you give in to the doctors? When did you?
Let's see. I was done with inpatient rehab and started working with this doctor right after I got done with outpatient rehab. Sorry.
Yeah.
Did I say outpatient or
You
inpatient?
said inpatient. I was going to ask that.
Yeah,
So-
outpatient.
So you got done with outpatient.
Yep, and then started working with this doctor who has a general like kind of longevity focus in his practice. So we were doing a lot of metabolic testing, DEXA scans, in bodies, all those kinds of things. Lots of blood work pretty regularly to see what was going on, and he put a CGM on me to see what was going on with my blood sugar, and noticed that at the time, around the times that I was working out, my blood sugar was going crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And-
CGM, continuous glucose monitor. Where you
Yeah.
in the
It's
arm
helpful
kind of thing,
insight.
Yeah.
Because even things that may spike my blood sugar may not spike yours.
Right.
Foods.
Very interesting information. And you
Yeah.
can actually get a couple just online.
Yeah.
Lingo is one. And what was the second one we tried?
Stella.
Stello,
Yeah,
yeah.
we've both done it off and on a couple times this
Very
year. and,
eye-opening.
Like,
Yeah, it is. It's helpful information.
Like sweet potatoes will spike me, but they won't spike you, kind of a thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird, but I think as it relates to nutrition, exercise, supplementation, like just finding something off the internet doesn't mean it's going to work for you.
Right.
You've got to play around with it, experiment,
See what feels good for your
see
body.
what feels good. What do you like? Like if you're like just dreading it,
Yeah.
that's already not a great start.
Right. What is your diet like now?
Just pretty balanced and simple.
Whole food, I'm guessing.
Yeah, for the most part. I prioritize protein. Try to get 150 to 180 grams of protein a day. And then, that to me, that is kind of the most important thing. And then I don't pay a lot of attention to carbs and fat. Because if you're eating that much protein, you're just kind of full anyway.
Yeah, it is going to help curb your appetite if you're getting enough protein. That is really kind of the number one that seems to be the case for people.
Yeah. Yeah, and when it comes to maintaining lean muscle mass, and I mean it's critical.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was quite the journey.
Sounds like it. I mean, we're so grateful that you're better and you're here and you're doing all the things to take care of yourself. Tell us about this recent trip to Disneyland. You took your family there. Was that kind of like a celebration? And also the kids were out of school, but I'm sure it was in the back of your mind like, God, this is amazing how far I've come in 2 years. And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we went, it was Disney World in Florida. We were on our way to go on a Disney cruise. And we figured, well, if we're going to travel all that way, we might as well do a couple days in Disney World. So we did Magic Kingdom and Animal Kingdom. And I very quickly remembered why we don't live in Florida.
Yes.
It was
You don't like
so
humidity?
hot and sweaty, and I'm just kind of a sweater anyway. So you put me in Florida and I'm not happy.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun. It was the day we did Magic Kingdom. It was very hot. But we went hard all day. And I didn't have to sneak back to the hotel to take a nap. So that was a win. And the second day we did Animal Kingdom, which is really cool. Lots of neat rides and stuff like that. Some of them I can't ride. If it's a ride that has virtual reality or screens, one of the weird things that I've never gotten motion sick, but now I do. With those screens and stuff like that.
I do too, and I never had a stroke. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
I hate those.
Yeah. And I learned that when we went to Universal Studios last year, and lots of their stuff is virtual reality type rides, and I was just like, oh man, I do not like that feeling.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah.
But it was still, they still have other rides that are a lot of fun, and the kids loved it. And then we went from there to Port Canaveral and got on a cruise ship for 7 days and did a Caribbean cruise. Yeah, it was nice. It was really nice. And kind of a cool thing about Disney in general is my wife and my 2 daughters have celiac disease. And when it comes to food allergies, they're the best.
Oh, really? That's great.
They take care of everything. You don't have to worry about contamination. So it was a vacation that we were able to go on where Kelly and the girls didn't have to worry about their food, which, when you have a food allergy like that, it's kind of top of mind all the time. Yeah. You can't just go eat something.
Right.
So I think, just from that perspective, not having to cook, not having to worry about the food, not having to clean, eliminating those things, even though it was busy, it was a nice time to kind of disconnect.
Be taken care of.
Yeah, disconnect from reality.
That's so good.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Well, if you had to name a book that if you wrote a book, what would the title be based on your experience?
Good question. I'm not sure if I'd title it this way, but it would be a book about surrendering and not trying to be a control freak. I think a lot of people just try to white knuckle their every aspect of their life. And that doesn't mean just kind of let go of the wheel and don't do anything, right? We still have action to take, but just driving hard to make sure you're getting the exact result that you planned out in your head. It just is a futile effort.
A fool's errand.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's a tough one for us humans.
Yeah, it really is.
And control is just a fear-based action that we take because we want to ensure safety. It's very normal. It's very human.
Survival.
Yeah.
That's what our mind, our ego is trying to do. Keep us alive. But sometimes it doesn't always make necessarily the best decisions for long-term survival.
Yeah. Well, good.
Yeah, and there's lots to be said with the connections of that concept with faith and spirituality that I think are really really important, and that that's one of the big things through all of this was incredibly faith building. 90% of the people that had the type of stroke that I had are either dead or severely disabled, whether that's cognitively or physically. And
I mean, you're sitting here and you're completely normal.
yeah.
So you take more naps than you used to. Blessing in disguise, maybe.
Yeah, I love naps. It's like my
They're the
favorite.
best.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, can you tell us about the Elevated Hope Project?
Yeah, so that's our podcast that we launched a couple months ago, I think. In typical fashion, it was an idea that we had probably 2.5 years ago, pre-stroke. That's kind of how we define our lives now.
Yeah.
Is this pre-stroke or post-stroke?
Yeah.
And I got all excited about it. Went out and bought all the equipment, right? The microphones, the control board, the cameras, just thousands of dollars of equipment, and then it just sat in my office,
Right.
collecting dust. And we were finally like, okay, we got to do something with this. So we launched the Elevated Hope Project, and what I do for a living is the company that I own. We own and operate charter schools here in the state of Arizona. They're all high schools for at-risk students. So we work with a lot of kids that have dropped out of school, or they're on the cusp of dropping out because they've fallen behind. We get some kids that are referred to us coming out of juvenile detention or behavioral health facilities, whatever, lots of different scenarios. And hope is the primary thing that we want them to experience when they come into our schools, right? Because these are the kids that just haven't found success in the traditional education environment. They've been told that they're dumb, that they can't, that they're going to amount to nothing, all those kinds of things. And that's not true. And when they walk into our schools, I want them to know that they're loved and that we're going to care for them, that there is hope for their future, and that they have an incredible potential within them that just hasn't been unlocked yet. And so the podcast is exploring those stories. It's kind of like a life story on many of our graduates, but we also interview some of our staff that work with those kids, because some of them have incredible stories of overcoming huge things in their life. And it's really to hopefully inspire others that to be looking for those things in their life that are going to bring them hope, and realize that their current reality isn't permanent, that there's things they can do and community they can surround themselves with that can help bring them out of it. And, I think we have 8 episodes so far. And some of the things that these kids have experienced in their life, I just can't even relate. Like it's so wild. And they've built like this grit in them and this resilience in them to like keep moving forward. Like our first episode, he was one of our first students when we got started, and just had addiction problems, and at one point was living in a little pallet house he built himself on the side of a railroad track, and finally was able to kind of lift himself up by the boots, and now he's thriving.
That's
And
amazing.
that's the theme is at some point the mindset has to shift, that you are not a victim, and that you can start doing things to create a brighter future for yourself. And every one of these people have. Yeah.
That's amazing. Where can people find or follow?
Yeah. So our Elevated Education is our kind of our umbrella company. Elevatedteens.com is that website. And then from there, you'll see our different schools that we have. And we're on the website is linked up the social media accounts and that kind of stuff.
How many schools and how many students approximately?
So we have just over 1,000 students that we serve in the state of Arizona across 6 different locations.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And you're probably just scratching the surface.
Yeah, we are.
But it matters to those. I mean, that's
it
the
does.
thing. It matters to those 1,000
It's all
kids.
worth it, even if there's just one.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Beautiful.
we are just scratching the surface. I think the fallout of COVID shutdowns and online schools is starting to be in full force. And there are so many kids that are 2 years behind in school. And now they're 17 and being like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to graduate on
And they
time.
feel like a failure. And
Right. And so that's where we come in to help them get caught up and reach their goal of graduating.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
beautiful.
Okay. Last question. How many hours a night are you sleeping now?
At least 8.
Okay.
At least 8. And if I can get 10, I want 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's before all of this, I didn't want to do the hard work of just the basic things to be healthy. I wanted the silver bullet. If there was a magic pill for it, I wanted it. Because it would just kind of take care of the problem and I can keep doing what I wanted to do. And, when you're recovering from a stroke, there isn't some kind of magic pill that you can take that's going to resolve the cognitive and physical issues, right? You just have to kind of plod away at the daily work of, physical therapy and the different cognitive exercises you have to go through. And I'm thankful for going through that and building the habit of working on those foundational things before you start thinking about anything else, right? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you getting enough movement, whether that's walking or lifting weights or whatever it is? Are you drinking enough water? Are you eating a clean diet? If you aren't doing those things, it doesn't matter what you take, what medicine, what supplements, and what magic pixie dust you sprinkle over yourself. Like, it doesn't matter because those foundations aren't in place. And that, again, that's another thing I learned from my wife Kelly is like the foundations are critical, and there's more to it than that. But those are really key things: is sleep, managing stress, moving, eating, and drinking enough water.
It's amazing the recurring theme that we're hearing on this podcast of people when they hit their rock bottom moment. What led them there? Always stress. And what gets them out is the fundamentals, like what you just said. We had Dr. Matt Delgado, amazing chiropractor, on a few episodes ago. And he told us the most amazing metaphor. He said, if your body is like a plant that you've had in a dark closet and it's not doing well, the key isn't to buy a magic dust on Amazon or some sort of supplement for the plant to put it on there and hope it works. He just said, move the plant to a place where the sunshine can get to it. Mm-hmm. The basic fundamentals of what keeps the plant alive isn't magic. It's not a external supplement or some sort of pill. It's no, just give it what it needs to thrive, and that's just move it to the sunshine.
Yeah. Yeah, the magic is in the design,
Right.
of how it was created.
Of how
and
God designed us, right?
Exactly. And that's the same thing applies for us.
Yeah.
You know, we were designed to move. We were designed to need sunlight, to drink water. Like these are all things that you can't escape it.
Right.
With any sort of success. There might be something you can take that can give you short term.
Well, and it's tough in a world of constant marketing. You know, take this, take that. This will fix that. This will fix that. And in a world of instant gratification.
Yeah.
You know, as human beings, we want to keep hustling. Things move so fast around us. So whatever it's going to take to let us keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it takes something big for us to wake up or to get a second chance before we don't have a second chance.
Yeah, I agree. And I've listened to several of the episodes, and that is, I mean, when people are in this position, there is no shortcut out. You have to go back to the basics and do it every day.
Learn to surrender.
Yeah.
I never get tired of the reminders.
Yeah.
Thank you
Well,
so much
I
for
need it
sharing your
daily.
story today. This has been amazing and super inspirational. And, you know, I just love that there are so many people like yourself that have been through something so big and that want to share their stories to help inspire someone else who may be going through this, or maybe someone hasn't had a stroke yet, but they find themselves kind of checking the boxes that you were checking prior to. That may be all they need to say, I think I'm going to start making some changes now.
Yeah. Don't ignore your blood pressure.
An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Amen.
Yeah, it really is. Get in front of it. It's achievable.
Good. Thanks, Jimmy.
Yeah. Thank you guys for having
Thank
me.
you.
It's wonderful.